Welcome to the Knowledge Gumbo Podcast, where we mix together timeless wisdom and thought-provoking discussions using quotes, sayings, proverbs, and book passages primarily by Black women. I am your host, Alicia Thomas, and a fellow knowledge seeker as well. Let's get cooking with this week's quote: "Revenge and retaliation always perpetuate the cycle of anger, fear, and violence," by Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King was a talented musician and singer, having trained in classical music. She often used musical talents to raise awareness and money for social justice issues. She is more than just Martin Luther King Jr.'s spouse. Revenge and retaliation create continual cycles of anger and fear. Because really all anger is the other side of fear. Fear of loss, fear, sometimes even of retribution. And it causes more damage to the person holding the revenge, the person wanting to retaliate. It messes with your entire mindset. And I never understood really wanting to do serious damage to someone. I mean, I've been angry and I wanted people to get theirs, but not enough that I wanted to participate in it. Bring down that person to what I thought was where they needed to be. Because in order to bring someone down, you have to take yourself down to that level in order to cause the revenge. Sometimes the best revenge is watching it happen and you had nothing to do with it. Because it's damaging, at least I find for myself, it's damaging to me when I'm seeking someone else's revenge or I'm wishing for someone's downfall. That is expending way too much energy and giving away too much power to someone else. And I don't want to be locked down by that cycle of anger and fear. It's like a hamster on a wheel and you can never get off. And why would I want to tie myself to something that weighs me down, doesn't make me a better person? And as I'm going on this wheel, I'm never getting anywhere. It's just the same views, the same places and faces. It's very dangerous to just stay in a continuous cycle like that. It pulls away everything that's good about you, that makes you unique and special, and you're giving energy to people that 9 times out of 10 aren't even really thinking about you anymore at all. It is critical to understand that energy is never created or destroyed. It's only transformed from one form to another. So that energy that you're giving it, you're not allowing it to transform into something positive. By staying on that hamster wheel, that same energy of anger is repeating itself and fueling itself over and over again. You want to take that energy and transform it into something positive. You take that anger, you take that resentment, and turn it into some positive forces to push you. Take control of it. Don't let it control you. Don't use the energy of anger to stay stationary. It's like a car idling. You're burning gas, but you're not going anywhere. And it does no one any good, not the person you're supposedly mad at. And it's not doing you any good because you're idling. You're not going anywhere. You're not moving forward. You're releasing your power, your ability to decide, your ability to move to someone else who, as I said previously, probably is no longer even thinking about you. They've went on and gone and done something else. And when we look at it in a wider view of anger, giving the quote by Coretta Scott King is that in a wider sense, when you're talking about things like racism, it's still giving up power. And a lot of the anger and resentment when we think about racism is a form of entitlement. No, you can't shop in our stores, and no, you can't go to our schools. They turn racism into a form of classism, and they didn't realize that a lot of the things that they were doing and voting against were voting against their own self-interest and keeping their own selves down. And this is just a personal opinion of mine, that the main reason her husband was killed was because he shifted his focus from just liberating Black people to liberating all poor people. Their focus on the Poor People's Campaign would have united people of multiple races, but who had all the same economic status. And that couldn't happen because that would upset the apple cart in the form of entitlement, that there had to be this major separation between the rich and the poor, because his life was never threatened by outside forces until he tried to bring together all poor people, not just Black poor people. And his wife was an amazing force behind the man, despite all his deficiencies as a husband. She was the one that was more of an activist when they met and pushed him to reevaluate his philosophies and where he stood when we look at segregation. Because, of course, we all know it was never separate and equal. It was just separate. And they had to live their lives battling anger and resentment, trying to get rid of, renting out space in their hearts and their minds for someone else to live and dictate. Because that's what we do when we're angry and we're bitter and we don't use it positively. We're renting out space in our mind for someone else to live and dictate our thoughts, our answers, how we move. And it's not right. We have to learn how to take back control, to release the anger, to forgive people, not for their sakes, but for our own, especially when it's a personal thing that we have even more control over. You don't really have control over whether someone is racist towards you or not, but you have control over how you respond to it. You have control over how you react and take it in or just let it bounce off of you, because you know that person 9 times out of 10 is acting out of fear, is acting out of a strange sense of entitlement, and neither one has anything to do with you, because we're seeing that more often with all these videos about these different quote unquote Karens that want to get Black men and women in trouble and using the police as weapons against us. But let's look at it on a more practical, personal level of looking at anger and forgiveness. I guess the best way to start off is we got to acknowledge what happened. If this person hurt us or we hurt someone, if we don't acknowledge the actual event and try to stuff it down or bypass it, it has little tentacles that holds on. And I think what we have to do is, recognize that we were hurt, we were wronged, or that we hurt someone and we wrong someone, and then move on and talk to someone that we trust. Open up about how you're feeling, because we can acknowledge that we were hurt. We can acknowledge that we're angry, but we can't let that anger turn our heart to stone, and we don't have to apologize for that person. Just embrace the emotion and know that it is okay to feel it, but we have an opportunity to release it. And then we have to look at, if we're having trouble releasing it, why? What's holding us back from forgiving someone? Why do we feel to need to be the quote unquote avenger? It's not our place, it's not our space. What you send out, you get back. I truly believe that. And they will get back what they've given out. And it doesn't have to come from you, because 9 times out of 10, it won't come from you. And that's the same thing if you look at the flip side. When you send out good in the world, when you bless other people, when you add value, that good and that value that comes back to you doesn't always come from the person you gave it to. Sometimes you never even see that person again, but it will come back. Those blessings will come back. And that's the same thing. We need to release the anger so that we don't hold on to it, because anger attracts more anger. And we'll take it out on people that we don't even realize that we're taking it out on them. And it's not anything that they did. It could be something simple, but because they tripped us on the wrong day at the wrong time, we'll explode lava all over someone who is totally not deserving of being treated that way. So find out, if you have trouble forgiving someone, what is going on inside of you that you can't let it go. The last thing I think you need to look at is eliminating that. Like I said, release those negative emotions and try to replace them with something positive. Because like I said, energy is neither created nor destroyed, but it's transformed energy. So transform that negative into something positive. If you're feeling negative, go out and do something good for someone else. Go out and bless someone else. Because if you're blessing and doing good, you don't have time to be angry. You don't have time to be hurt. You've changed that negative emotion into compassion, into understanding, and you just move on to the next thing. Let me share a quick story. Back in high school, I had a best friend and we were really cool. And all of a sudden, I don't remember exactly what the fight was about, but we had this big blowout and she called me everything but a child of God and didn't want to be friends anymore. And I was hurt, of course, but you can't force anybody to be in your life. It took a while to get through, but in the midst of trying to heal, she started spreading rumors about me. She tried to turn other friends against me. And boy, I told you, I was so hot that I was, I really wanted to go over and just, knock the what. But I'm like, no, it took a while, but I'm like, that's not the person I want to be. And I'm not going to talk about her bad to these other people. I'm just going to trust that the people who are truly my friends, they've been around me long enough to know who I am. And it's up to them to decide if they want to keep being friends with me or not. But it took me a while. I promise you. I wanted, when I first heard what was going on, because of course, a friend of mine let me know what was being said. I wanted to hop in the car, like I say, and roll up on her. But then I decided, like I said, this is not who I am and this is not what I want to be. And it gave me a chance to find out who was truly my friends, because my friends who knew me defended me, stood up for me. And just because I found out, because they came back and told me what was going on. And I had to let that go. So I made peace with it. It took me a while to release the anger. And then, of course, you have the issue of Facebook. I'm not really a big social media person, but being on Facebook, all of a sudden you get these friend requests from people back in grade school, high school, college. Some people you weren't even friends with back then, trying to figure out who you are, and they're just mostly being nosy. So I get a friend request from this person on Facebook, and I'm like totally shocked. So I DM her back saying, why are you trying to friend me? And she sends a message back saying, well, I thought we're older and you'd be over all that stuff. We were young and I'm like, you tried to assassinate my character. I'm not angry with you anymore, but that doesn't mean I have to give you space back in my life to do it again. And she was so angry and said, I thought you were a bigger person than that, and you're a grown woman holding on to childish things. And I was like, you know what? God bless. And I blocked and kept it moving. I just didn't want that kind of drama in my life anymore. And the fact that she responded the way she responded let me know things really didn't change at all. And on a side note, especially over this past year, I went in and started unfriending or deleting, or however you want to call it, a lot of the people that I went to school with, who I think were just being, people looking at your life and seeking and being nosy, but they didn't want to engage with me. They didn't want to renew friendships. They didn't want to be active in my life. And I'm like, okay, I'm giving space to people who are not adding any value. And it was funny going through that list of friends and stuff. And even in my Instagram, going through the people I was following and getting rid of people. It was so liberating. It was so freeing. And you don't realize sometimes you're being held down until you start cleaning out spaces. And hopefully for me, I'm making room for people who do add value. And of course, that I can reciprocate and add value into their lives. So let's look at this quote just one more time. Revenge and retaliation always perpetuate the cycle of anger, fear, and violence, by Coretta Scott King. So I'm talking primarily during this podcast about how someone who wronged you, but we need to look at ourselves as well. So I'm going to issue this challenge of name a person who you have to seek forgiveness from. Let's flip the script. Don't always look at it from the standpoint of who wronged you, because probably one of the reasons you might have trouble forgiving other people is because you haven't forgiven yourself for wronging other people. So if you are the one who wronged someone, apologize. And remember that an apology is not just words. The words are important, but the true foundation of apology is changed behavior. If the behavior doesn't change, really it is just words. But it is important that you apologize with words. But the main thing is to change the behavior, or don't repeat the same behavior. Because personally, like I said, this is a personal thing I'm about to share, is I despise when people say to me in their apology, if I offended you. I've already, you know that I am offended. Don't backhand it by saying, if I offended you, I'm sorry. The other thing that I despise is when people go, it wasn't my intention. It may not have been your intention, but that is a result. Apologize for the result, not your intention. And the one that really, as they say in the South, burn my grits is when somebody tells you, you know my heart. No, I don't. By your actions, your heart is black. I don't know your heart. I know your actions. And your actions are usually a reflection of your heart, especially when that's how you start a quote unquote apology. You know my heart. That one really irritates me above all the other things. Let me leave that right there. And let's give another shout out, to Coretta Scott King for this amazing quote, because I was amazed in her ability to forgive and keep moving forward after the assassination of her husband, especially when you look at that. She was the first woman to deliver a class day address at Harvard, and she gave it in June of the same year that her husband was assassinated in April to the young people at Harvard. And let me read this quote, or not quote, excerpt from the speech that she gave these young people. She said, as young people, as students, your lives have been greatly affected by the loss of the champions of justice, meaning her husband and also Robert Kennedy, by the loss of these champions of freedom, of justice, of human dignity and peace. In a power-drunk world where means become ends and violence becomes a favorite pastime, we are spitefully moving towards self-annihilation. Your generation must speak out with righteous indignation against the forces which are seeking to destroy us. And I think that is a powerful statement, and it's also a scary statement because it is relevant for the times that we live in right now. So I'm amazed at the times that we live in are so close to those times. It may look a little different, but the anger and the resentment are still there. And the sense of fair play, the sense of seeking out peace is still being sought after. And she believed that freedom was an ongoing process, and that inspired her advocacy. And I'm amazed that all that she was able to accomplish, including getting her husband's birthday as a national holiday, and she continued to be an advocate of civil rights, of women's rights, through her entire lifetime. She didn't let the bitterness, the anger, the hurt, and the pain of having her husband taken away from her to cause her to turn her back on that movement. If anything, it made the fire inside her burn brighter, and she changed that negativity into positive. So as I challenged you before, name a person who you have to seek forgiveness, and put that person's name down below. Comment one way or one thing as well that helps you to forgive. Let's help our community find ways that we can let go of any anger, any resentment, so that we don't seek revenge, that we don't let it burn so much inside of us that we become violent either towards that person or to someone else who just happens to be in the vicinity when you go off. So comment those things below. Thank you for listening and watching. If you received some value from this episode, share it with 2 people, especially friends of yours. For the audio fam, please leave a positive review on your preferred podcast platform. For the video kin folks, please like this episode and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, you are always welcome to pull up a chair. As Grandma used to say, there's always room for one more at the table. The gumbo is hot and made with love. See you next week.
Gather round, y'all. It's time to groove.